Good afternoon, folks. Two Smite game heads right here ready to bring it. Tom and Tolly bringing the business. First of all, how you doing, man?
Feeling good after that last set specifically as well. Good to see, Vaporish Coast still at it again in the European scene.
Yeah, many things have changed. New gods, new map things, but Vaporish Coast is still bringing you the business. Now we'll head back over here towards North America and say what up to some familiar faces. We're going to look at PlayStation 4, so some newer guys on the scene right now.
A little bit from one side. Benedicts Cavalry, a little bit unfamiliar, but on the other side, I think that Cyclone GG, a couple of names that are going to be familiar.
Exactly. You mentioned a Cyclone. We're going to see MySweetPatato. Joltak is going to be around. One of the bigger things, actually, that I think is interesting is Orignalspartan. Shout out to the Orignal right there. I make fun, but he's been a part of the scene for a long time, just never at this pro level. So, let's see what you got.
Also, the Hunter player AxiomSpeed, formerly from Strictly Business, has a little bit of experience under his belt. So if you're just looking at experience, you kind of lean a little bit from Cyclone, but don't ever count a new set of players. You don't know what they're going to be bringing into the battlefield.
That's the biggest case, is that the unknown is just that. It's the unknown. We don't know if these players, maybe they're the next coming. We'll just have to find out. Cyclone is going to be an interesting watch for sure. So as we kind of look at this one, Tolly, what are you feeling? Where do you look at these teams?
I think that these teams are going to lean a little bit towards the solo lane action. Specifically, the last set we saw the difference between the Artio versus the King Arthur. If these teams are a similar style, we're probably going to expect to see maybe some Vamana bans or some early picks like that.
Not a bad idea, not a bad thought process. I absolutely expect. Listen, pick King Arthur.
It's pretty good.
It's that simple. King Arthur and the Zerker's Shield will do the job. So I want to see a lot of King Arthur. Vamana bans as well. Interesting to see where Freya is. I think she's strong, but perhaps not as strong as like the Freya in our mind is. Does that make sense?
It definitely makes sense because there's just so many strong picks right now in general. So we're going to see from some Freya bans. Like last set, we saw the Freya bans from both sides. I think Ricardo were the ones that did not want that to go through. So I think that with Hera on the table, there's going to be also Pele that you have to worry about from time to time. So there's so many picks out there that you have to worry about. And if you want to focus on the dual lane, focus on it. If you want to focus on the solo lane, you have to prioritize that and get an aggressive jungler with it.
Yes, aggressive jungler is certainly the thought process there, and we've seen a bunch of them. We've seen Vamana wind up in the jungle, and although he's a warrior, he's absurdly aggressive. So we'll go from aggressive to the picks and the bans. Let's see what winds up here. Left side going to be Cyclone, and we'll see if that one, where everything winds up. The first ban of the game, Freya, right like that.
No surprise, but if you are the first pick, you generally want to leave some of the OP gods open. Freya is one of those gods that could go sneak through if you're on the first pick. With Cavalry, taking away the Bacchus, he has a lot of magical power with the changes to that level 1 Chug being available. You have extra mitigations as well, so it doesn't matter where you stick him, whether it's the soul lane or the support on top.
You want to see some Bacchus solo, don't you?
I've seen it before in some of my ranked games, so it wouldn't surprise me if we see it even here in the console world.
Well, we'll keep an eye on it. But Janus, the god of doors. I like just making him sound lame because he's anything but. Top pick over here for Cyclone across the way. The Cavalry is going to bring out, well, the literal Cavalry. Guan Yu's got a horse. And he's going to be picked up alongside Kumbhakarna. But ain't nothing sleepy about this one. A Cyclone option on their side.
Still a lot of valuable picks between Hera, King Arthur, Artio was available if they wanted to go for that. But instead going for safe team fight centric picks. Giannis for the mobility, Geb for the escape factor with some of those shields. The cleanse is important. And especially when you're picking an aggressive god such as a Musinkob that doesn't have those escapes, that's the foundation of the Giannis and Geb to allow AMC to thrive.
That lane's going to be, AMC is going to offset what Geb's doing. So a nice look there. Susano, choice. You were talking about aggressive junglers. Susano. Yes. Pretty aggressive.
Very, considering that Guan Yu needs that aggressive jungler pressure to kind of alleviate from the weakness of his early game.
So we saw some Guan earlier today, and I just wanted your take as, you're our resident solo expert.
Sure.
For those of you just joining us in Season 6, totally an ex-professional solo laner himself. Talk to me a little bit about why we're seeing Guan kind of out of nowhere.
it's not really out of nowhere. I think everyone still has in the back of their mind that Guan Yu is still a powerful god in his teamfight powers. You get a little bit of cooldown reduction, you spam the heals, you have the balance of offensive and defensive capabilities. The only weakness from Guan Yu is his laning phase. If you can cancel out the Tallow Assault, you should be able to control it. And now with Season 6, that you have access to the Totem of Ku, so you get 125 gold team collectively every minute or so. You want to make sure you're not giving up that early game pressure, but if you play your cards right and get out of that early game without losing too much, Guan Yu has probably the second best carry potential, if not the best, next to Amaterasu coming from that solo.
And of course, Arthur.
Yes.
Current Inosta selection here for the Cavalry. Second round of bans already out. Cavalry says no to Odin and no to Arlong Shen. Cyclone across the way. It says no to 2 mages. No Raijin, no Poseidon. But the Jungle Monkey's coming to play, baby. Hood Batsinator. That's what we like to see. One of my favorite characters. I think he's just so damn dynamic.
I think so too. His one difficulty is how telegraphed his overhand smashes, so you have plenty of time to Aegis it. But what I like more than seeing the Hunbats is the Bellona. Bellona has not fallen out of favor in my eyes personally, and you're able to really start dominating the lane if you could just clear it first, get the Totem of Ku, and that's going to be the goal for this Bellona solo lane.
Well, it's certainly an interesting look so far. Cyclone, Cavalry, Game 1. Bring it to the casters.
Thanks so much, Tom and Tolly. On the call for this PS4 set, the first one of Season 6, it's going to be myself and Taco. How you doing, Taco?
Feeling pretty good. Really excited. I mean, we already saw the Xbox guys duking it out a little bit earlier on today, so now the world of PS4, similar in a sense.
I mean, both on the sticks, that's the main thing, but North America this time. We saw Europe earlier on today playing PlayStation, and now it's going to be Cyclone. What can they do up against Benedicts Cavalry? Cyclone, these players have been around a little while, Taco, mainly seen on the Xbox, as you can see by Joltak there, just clearly giving it away with his name. But some of those other players also played on the console side of things a few years ago.
Looking more so towards Orignalspartan, I think, for some of that veteran leadership and Cyclone, and as well as MySweetPatato. Even though he's a PS4 native, from what I understand, he's still somebody who's been around the competitive scene ever since it came out.
The B could be in a bit of trouble here, a bit pushed forward. They're trying to clear the wave out. Instead, B used early by Axiom as he has to get away from the root. Mystic trying to punish a little bit more with some basics, but not enough to cause too much problem. And Joltak walks away too, but Geb and AMC look for that early pressure. Took a bit of punishment for Taco, but they should be fine.
It's not as big of a deal as you would originally assume, but Houseplant now looking to get further collapse here. Creep wave hasn't been cleared out, however, so Mystic Salmon taking a decent bit of poke exchange from those minions, too.
Most interesting thing of this so far, Taco, is the fact that both the mid laners straight away, starting off with Boots too, very quick bases out of both of them, if you notice, and they've both gone straight into Shoes of Focus. What's the reason for this?
This is just...
Is this a PlayStation
I think
only
this
thing?
feels like a PS4 theory craft in the works so far. Giannis and Discordia both opting for the cooldown reduction boots over a blessing means that they're still going to have a little bit of issues, I think, with their mana sustain throughout the duration of the laning phase, but it's not going to be impacted nearly as heavily because they did offer the CDR boots, so they do get a little bit more mana than what you would originally have.
We'll see what happens further on. Now, Houseplant did start off with that Blink on Kumbhakana, something you don't see too often. Blinks are useful, but generally seen as a second relic for the supports as we tune in with Beaudilla there on the Bellona. The Totem of Ku, the newest addition to Smite. Taco, what do you think about the Totem?
Totem's interesting because it gives the solo lane something to fight over, and I think that's why we're starting to see some of these more aggressive picks resurface. The Guan Yus, the Bellonas, Osiris's, they've been all over the place lately, and I gotta say, it's nice to see the Warriors again. I think we were all getting a little bit tired of Sobek with Guardian's Blessing.
But do we expect to see more Guan as the season progresses? At the moment, I see the Guan Yu over in the solo lane a little bit more so. But is it getting
as long as he's able to bring the hurt or the heals, I think that's all we're really looking for out of this Guan Yu. And teams are just understanding, especially at a competitive level of play where you've got synergy, you've got communication, it's a lot easier to coordinate that Guan Yu throughout the team fights. Plus, Runeforge is fairly popular right now.
Yeah.
Same for Blackthorn Hammer, and Gravro and I were actually just talking about it, but every single swing out of that cavalry charge, Runeforge extra damage being applied, and it's 15% if I recall correctly.
It is indeed 15% extra damage you'll do to them. Not only that, we've seen it out of a couple of the Hunters as the season's starting to begin, I should say. But Mystic Salmon and Axiom here, AMC and Kurnos, which could both make use of it, haven't actually chose to go that route this game.
Yeah, I think that's just player preference more than anything else. Runeforge definitely viable on both of these hunters, and I am also quite surprised to not see them with it. But I think that this is just a primary example of the meta just being different based on whatever platform you may be playing on. You expect to see things going a little bit differently. MySweetPatato, though, still looking to confirm this blue buff invade. And alongside of the Bologna, does not seem like it's going to work out in their favor. Snadows and his jungler, Daniel Perez, are going to be able to confirm that one for themselves.
Yeah, it was one of those fights where it looked like it could go in Cyclone's favor. Lots of pressure on multiple areas of the map now. Joltak's a little bit far forward on this red on his own, going to be a little bit careful, but has pressure in the mid lane from the Giannis and the Hunbats too. Looking for the steal with a punch, won't find it. And now Joltak gets hit by the apple. And the walk away will happen from Cyclone after the fact of the red buff actually going down there. And now he looks towards Mystic Salmon.
Mystic Salmon going to have to be forced out of his purification beads. But Giannis, from behind the back too, doesn't even let the man turn around first to face him.
A little bit greedy, though, from Cyclone, staying around for the purple buff. Joltak in a bit of trouble here because Perez is over this side, too. However, Spartan has hung around as well to support Perez on the run. So is Houseplant. Round the corner comes MySweetPatato. And there's nothing sweet about that from Daniel's point of view. 2 kills to Cyclone. They get themselves a nice lead.
That timing could not have been better on the rotation from MySweetPatato. He was waiting for his moment to jump, too. And you've got to have some kind of a response there if you're Benedicts, but there's just no answer to be found.
Oh, Beaudilla needed a response then. It will be to Eagles Rally away from Snadows, who used the cavalry charge to keep the pressure going. Does have a, well, working towards potentially the next couple of items. You can see as well, bit of defense coming out from Beaudilla early on. What you'd expect with one of the newer items to the scene.
And it went from a potential red buff invade to a certain purple buff invade. I think that this is just Cyclone taking advantage of their early game mobility. I don't think... When it came to Joltak, level 3 Geb, you're not normally scared by that. If anything, I'm kind of surprised that Benedicts Cavalry didn't look to play more aggressively onto that Geb. He was invading by himself at first, but I think as soon as they saw Orignalspartan starting to make the rotation over, that's what persuaded Sternhawk to kind of disengage there, but Houseplant just never really seemed to get the memo. He went to try and assist his carry.
Beaudilla didn't get the memo about the rotation from mid lane because in comes Discordia too. The apple's going to cause problems. No Eagles Rally available, but still trying to box it out with a bludgeon won't be enough as Perez brings him down. Now he's going to escape the monkey that was off the mark with the toss. And over the wall, SweetPatato goes, being chased down by Snadows. No ultimate available just yet, but he's closing the gap.
That just felt forced from Cyclone, and I think that they wanted it.
I saw it coming. Saw the cavalry charge coming. The dunk should be good. Snadows picks up the kill. But now there's 3 in mid against 2. 4, I should say, against 2 of Cyclone as Joltak forced to use the Cataclysm defensively to get himself out of danger.
He's just trying to make sure that nobody else is going to smother him shortly after. With 4 members from Benedicts Cavalry looking to collapse, I mean, anything is possible in that situation, but these rotations from Snadows so early on, he's not trying to stay locked down. And Axiom now forced to disengage from the wild hunt out of Mystic.
Oh, Spartan's got no mana though. Epic Couple connects, and round the corner comes Sternhawk for the kill, but the beats used by Spartan buys him another second. Pull through the wall will only help him momentarily. He's just trying to buy as much time as possible. He might get out if Geb can get here, but the chase is on for the Spartan, and one basic from Sternhawk will bring him down and give Benedicts Cavalry the lead for the first time this game.
That was Sternhawk's only chance though. He had to connect that in hand, otherwise Spartan was out of there. A little bit longer, though, and I think that there might have even been chance for a counter rotation. So Benedicts has got to be a little bit better about confirming their abilities there. I don't think that there's a reason for Orignalspartan to have lasted anywhere near as long as he did to begin with.
Well, there goes the Tomaku, and as you can see just around Benedict Cavalry's tower there, a little bit of an aura. It gives you a bit of movement speed, a bit of MP5, which is very useful for your team, alongside 25 gold each for every member. So after 2, it's 50 Gs. It's not a bad day's work for hitting a totem a couple of times.
It's nice to have. I'll say that much. When you're the team that's benefiting from the Tonaku and having it consistently, then you certainly do start to notice the effects of it in a positive light, because that little bit of mana goes a long way during these early laning phases.
I was going to say, is it something we may see as the season progresses where more teams pay attention to the Tomaku in the early game? Is it that worthwhile, would you say?
Not enough for like a jungler, for example, to get involved, or a mid laner to go out of their way to make a rotation for it, but I definitely do still see solo laners having a purpose to fight in that solo lane, and that could possibly draw the attention of junglers or mid laners looking to get collapses onto the warriors or whoever it is that might be over in solo lane. But I definitely think, for the most part, you're better off just focusing on your own jungle buffs and lane farm as a jungler or a mid laner.
Well, some more pressure on the right-hand side coming up from Benedicts Cavalry towards the blue buff. And Snadows trying to get some pressure on towards Orignalspartan, realizing the ult was down, forces the portal out. No doom or gloom there for the time being. Main thing to note is the action. There's been fights everywhere, and specifically the dueling.
Great beads, but the Geb Shield might have been enough to do it. Still, Houseplant will be punished for trying to be aggressive there. And AxiomSpeed just showing a little bit of what this B can still do. He hurts a lot, and that's why it's even more surprising to see him without the Runeforge.
Yeah, the Runeforge causes so many problems for players, especially, you know, the B's honey gives you the slow that gets your impact. Same for Kernanos. He manages to use, you know, the basic of his 2 to cause so many problems. But it's not going to be enough just yet. Only a 400-500 gold difference separating these two teams as it stands. In the jungle, keep an eye on what MySweetPatato is building towards here already. Early on, deciding to go for some, well, cooldown and mana regen. I'm not so sure. It's
only 10% cooldown. Humbat's, though, one of the more mana-greedy gods for sure.
That's
but
true.
I'm not completely convinced on this Blackthorn. The only way that I think he can really prove a difference for this item over a Jotuns or a Crusher, for example, is if he is constantly the initiator.
Right.
He just has to be up front and center, because you throw in an item that gives you this much health,
yeah,
you have to do something with it.
And that's what it really gives you. The main thing that people may look to pick it up for is 400 health, I believe. Nice little whack there. Houseplant trying to defend this buff, but blink over from SmiteVOD towards Seahawk. Seahawk has the beats, still returns some damage back, but a good shield out of Joltak prevents some of that. SmiteVOD under pressure, has to portal away. Nobody dead just yet. Unstable Vortex off the mark from Spartan there, looking for Houseplant, but it's all about this red buff.
Houseplant still looking to play defense. Wild Hunt is good, but it only hits AxiomSpeed, and Houseplant's just left in the center of everybody at 10% health.
Still alive, though, gets away, and now Daniel comes in, pulling back Joltak, but it is a tank after all. At the end of the day, red buff falls down, and that's the end of the engagement.
But this just feels like miscommunication all over the place from Benedicts and Cyclone. I think that MySweetPatato, sure, he's calling out, I'm going to go in on the Discordia, but Orignalspartan's through space and time wasn't even close. I think that he might have just been providing that as more of an exit route than anything else, but I just want to break down Benedicts in that team fight, because they just scattered. Their target focus was all over the place. They couldn't tell if they wanted to hit the Geb or the Monkey or even the AMC, and they lost their buff.
Well, Beaudilla here just took this totem coup, but maybe he's overextended because Daniel Perez was on the rotation. Won't be enough, though. Eagles Rally was available, and he'll get back to tower range for the time being.
I mean, they've got 3 wards on their red buff alone. You don't need 2 sentry wards and a regular ward. Like, that shouldn't be happening at competitive play. I definitely think that this team might just be not having one designated shot caller is what it feels like right now.
Because everyone's kind of doing their own thing. But
exactly.
Okay, I get you. Shots out towards the mid lane for the time being. Got his reinforced Greaves online, as well as some magical defense that we've seen time and time again in last season. Mainly because the mages have been a bit more impactful in the early game, and they're having to deal with those as well as Guardians. Comes in handy quite nicely. But on the other strain of things, Houseplant going for what looks like will be sovereignty.
Sounded like somebody just got Kumba ulted in the mid lane. Epic uppercut seemed to go off, but if it was Joltak, I don't think he really cares.
Not at this point. If you're going to waste on the Geb, it's no problem. In the duel lane, the fight continues, and the B escapes being polymorph for the time being. Daniel, at the same time, found a rotation from Beaudilla from the solo lane, and he was just looking for a cheeky pick in mid. But talking about picks, here we go with the red buff again. Cyclone looking to invade.
There's a problem, though, for Benedicts. They don't have any backup. Their Hunter is so pressured out underneath his tower right now. He's just struggling to keep AxiomSpeed away from the tower, and MySweetPatato is just not going to waste any time. Mystic Salmon already knows he's a goner. The beads force is the most important thing to look at there, and Axiom is just full-on taking advantage of this lane now. He needs help.
From what I can tell, Taco, yeah, that's where Benedicts are really struggling more than anywhere else, is this duo lane. The start of the game looked interesting because of the pressure that AMC Geb put out. It allowed them to even things up for now, but Kernanos really struggling at the moment. dealing with Axiom in lane. Do you want to see more ganks there than if the B's going to be that pushed up?
I wanted to see ganks from the very start. You've got Susano, he's got such heavy mobility, and it handles AMC incredibly well. Right now, Epic Uppercut still not going to be able to connect.
Beautiful play from Houseplant there, just slowing down Axiom enough to get Daniel Perez in range. The knockup's good, the sting is there, but space and time has arrived, and immediately Benedicts Cavalry have to turn tail. They've got support coming in from Mystic Salmon as well as Sternhawk, as Houseplant gets a good route off. Joltak's not done. He will get a knockup, but there's no further follow-up, and maybe Joltak bought off more than he can chew, but luckily enough, he'll roll out to safety.
This might sound crazy, but I wish that the Susano would have just committed onto the AMC there. I think he could have stayed. I mean, worst case scenario, you're trading out a 1-for-1 exchange, but you're saving your ADC. At the current rate that this dual lane has been going, it was only a matter of time before that T1 tower ended up falling, but even more importantly is the fact that Axiom is alive. He's just building onto his lead, and if you're ganking him and still unsuccessful because he has his beads, that's just not a good look.
And now Axiom's managed to go back, pick up his Aegis as well, now that he's hit level 12, so a bit more of an issue to gank this Hunter. Not only that, got to give credit to Cyclone for noticing that's where they're going to be vulnerable. That's where Benedicts may like to put pressure, is on the dual lane. So they had Orignalspartan and the rest of the squad ready for the rotations with that space and time, and make sure AMC stays alive.
It's still pretty crazy to me, though. Seeing an AMC make it this far into the match without a single death, there's been so much focus towards dual lane in Season 5 and Season 6 now at the start. And this is like our first glimpse into the competitive minds, albeit from a console side of view, and I do strongly believe that console and PC metas tend to differ.
Really? And what scale is that?
I think it differs drastically in terms of god pool selection choices and player preferences, as well as just the way that teams tend to group around objectives in play. I think that PC is a little bit more precise because largely due to the fact that it's been around longer, so it's a little bit more defined by them because the players have so much more experience.
Yeah, crossplay's been an interesting thing so far. From listening to players, a lot of people believe the one thing that PC has an advantage on is the meta in terms of like shot calling and team fights seem a little bit different than that at console, but those bridges will be closed as time continues. Looking at the relic situation next and just seeing how things are developing here. I do like that Cursed Donk being picked up by Beaudilla. Not upgraded just yet, but it will cause a couple of problems for Snadows with that Guan Yu. If he gets the heal off and it's upgraded, he's going to take even more damage, and so will his teammates.
It's his teammates that I'm really looking towards. I don't really expect Snadows to be the target here, but I love these groupings from Cyclone. Ever since level 1, it was very clear that they wanted to be the ones establishing pressure on the dual side buffs, and I think they've done an excellent job at that so far into this match.
I will say, Mystic Salmon, I feel really bad for him at the moment. He's basically being fished at the moment. They're just constantly looking to catch him on a rotation towards his buff or anything. Talk about catching on a rotation. Here's Geb with a big cataclysm on 2. Knock up after the fight was MySweetPatato. Holding. Finno Evil, boom! But the knock up from Daniel Perez, and his ultimate will keep him alive. On the backside, Cyclone get the Gold Fury. His 2 members were over there doing that as the whole fight was breaking out. 5-3. And how about looking at a cheeky red? Not this time, says Mystic Salmon. He'll make sure he secures that for himself, but Sternhawk could be in trouble.
It's the only thing he's been able to confirm this game is Beaudilla is going to have no problem whatsoever in bringing down Sternhawk. It's a full health, full mana Bellona. There's just nowhere for this Discordia to run. And all the while, T2 Tower is being sieged while there's pressure in mid lane. Benedicts Cavalry, their heads are just spinning right now. They don't know which lane to try and defend.
Completely agree. I mean, all the while, Snadows did get a tier 1 in the solo lane, but I love the fact that Cyclone realized how strong they were in the mid and the dual lane. So rotate Beaudilla over, keep the pressure going. A Gold Fury, a tier 1 in mid, and a tier 2 in left. Huge gold swing as Orignalspartan trying to get away from Snadows. He can give chase for a while without the tower, but that's slow from the threshold will be enough for the escape.
But that was a Guan Yu ultimate. What happens if there's a team fight within the next minute and a half, which there very well could be a structure force in the solo lane if Cyclone decide that they want to do a 5-man grouping to go and take out the T1 tower or the Pyromancer? There's really not a whole lot that can afford to stop them right now from Benedicts.
In fairness, though, Snadows hasn't been in the team fight yet, so if he doesn't come in the team fight again until his ultimate's back up, that's okay.
none of his team is the one getting pressured, which has been the case this entire match so far. I think that Snadows, while he did good taking the T1 tower from solo lane, that's not the directive here, I don't think, for Benedicts. That 500 gold is a lot less impactful than losing your T2 tower at the 15-minute mark.
So game 1 of the first week of looking at PlayStation in Season 6 at the moment. And so far, it's looking good for Cyclone. They're up about 6,000 gold as they look towards this Pyromancer. Snadows is around looking to steal it away. Won't find it though as Housepack goes to the back and yawns on the carries. Axiom knocked up into the air by the Epic Uppercut, but no follow-up was there. The apple off, but it hits Beaudilla on the backlines. Meanwhile, SmiteVOD brings down Housepack, but that's only a tank down as Beaudilla now on the run gets a good shield from Joltak. Snadows being chased out around the Fire Giant area there. 1-0 in favor of Cyclone as well as the Pyromancer. And that was probably the best example of Benedicts not really seeming to have an established shot caller that I can think of. MySweetPatato gonna teleport right on over to Sternhawk. He's already unveiled himself, and there's just not very many places left for this Discordia to run. The unstable Vortex will beat him to it. Base is the best place for him to run there. At least not behind. Well, he's not running. That's true. That's true. He teleported very quickly, and now the Fire Giant under threat. Joltak showing his best version of how to tank it up, get knocked up as much as possible. These Fire Giants, though, Taco, they hurt a lot more than they used to. Oh, way more than what they used to, and Snadows knows it. Joltak is already so low. He's going to have to use his shield on himself just to survive walking out of the pit. The big thing here, or the big saving grace for Benedicts, is that Axiom opted for a penetration-based AMC build, which I don't blame him for. This is a good build pathway to go when you have this much pressure and are looking for that boosted stinger damage. But it definitely sucks when you're trying to take down the Fire Giant not to have that crit. Well, I love what Snadows did here. He delayed the backs out of Cyclone after going for that cheeky Fire Giant play. Didn't work out for them. His team get the tier 1 in mid lane, so a bit of global gold for Benedicts Cavalry. But now he needs his cavalry. Does Snadows to get away from the chase that's onto him? Unstable hits Portal 2. Over the wall comes Beaudilla. There's the use of the Fear No Evil 2. A lot invested for that kill on the Guan Yu. But Houseplant may also be a casualty now for trying to help out his solo lane. The problem is the Cyclone don't lose anything for using every single ult on 2 tanks because there's no one from Benedicts that's local to try and help out. I think it worked out for Snadows to delay the back. I think the speed buff was just too greedy. He didn't need to be there. Benedicts fall further behind, so the Fire Giant started up once again. Cyclone in a good position. Beaudilla going to be the tank. SmiteVOD, Spartan, and Joltak all waiting on zone coverage. You know there's not going to be a contest out of Benedicts here because look at where Discordia is. It's wishful thinking at best from Benedicts Cavalry's carries to try and contest that Fire Giant. They don't stand a single chance of making their way into the pit. That's already been proven by the fact that MySweetPatato and Joltak just ran at Benedicts Cavalry and no one had any form of a response. This game, I think, is already start to spiral pretty heavily out of control here for Benedicts. Their best bet is to try and make their final stances underneath their Phoenixes. I don't even think they really have much of a chance looking to contest these T2 towers because if they wipe there, their Titan is falling. I will say that very first team fight that we had wasn't really a team fight because someone died immediately before doing anything. So we've not really had a proper team fight on the books, and Benedicts Cavalry are just slowly but surely bleeding out to Cyclone now. It's going to cause more problems as this game continues. But this is right around what I expected to see from Cyclone, considering that the vast majority of this roster are all members who have either participated in the console league before. Yep. I believe that there's a lot to be said when a player is more experienced, not just because they don't get the same... I don't think players get as nervous when they've already had that initial competitive debut. And the same can't be said for Benedicts Cavalry. I would not be surprised if every single one of those members is a PS4 native that is brand new to the competitive scene and worked really hard to get here. But this is a taste of the big leagues. Sure, and you got to learn as you go. Sometimes it takes a couple of weeks to get used to the speed, the pacing, and the mistakes you're making and how to correct them. Cyclone have multiple members on this squad that competed in the fall split of the PS4 console leagues. So it's no surprise to see, well, two teams that were the top two are basically mixed into one here on the Cyclone roster. And so far, so good. All the tier 2s down, barring the one on the right-hand side here. Cyclone starting to group up, and Benedicts looking like they might be interested in trying to defend this here.
And they've got all the time in the world for this siege, though, Hindu, because best case scenario, they find a pick, and it might be Snadows who ends up falling if he's not careful. Straight into the Giannis, so through space and time, collecting bodies this game.
I was about to say, I don't think this is that much of a good call, Taco, with that all investment onto Snadows, who had his cavalry charge, but Spartan managed to find the exact moment when he was going to mount and picked him up for the kill. Now the Phoenix under threat.
It was a 5v5 or nothing in my mind, Hindu, and Benedicts Cavalry is just continuing to collapse. They wish they had some form of reinforcement, but there is no one coming to save them. 2 members already waiting to respawn. The other 3 stuck inside the fountain.
Cyclone realizing they've got a small window here. 2 members dead of Benedicts Cavalry already. Houseplant in the back trying to slow them down, but the Titan still at half health. Joltak tagging up for a while he can. Will this go down, or will the defense be good enough? Well, with Houseplant falling, that could be the game, and I believe it will be. Cyclone take game 1 in this best of 3.
Just a slight delay at the end there, mostly because Cyclone, I think, couldn't decide between ending the game or making sure everybody was dead before they did.
On paper, coming into this, like we said, we've got a couple of players on this Cyclone team that have been around, played in the full split, so experience versus, well, rookie to an extent. You know,
they're fresh.
Learning, fresh.
It's rookie of the year for all 5 of them.
What do you think they need to improve on their focus first, though, going into game 2?
A big thing for me is just the initial start. It was very sloppy, I'd say, as a whole from everybody out of Benedicts. They just did not really seem to understand how those original buff invades were working. They didn't really try to provide any sort of pressure relief to their ADC. I definitely think that they should have been way more attentive towards that Kronos AMC matchup.
Well, we'll find out what happens in game 2, but first of all, we've got the deaths to break down game 1.
Thanks a lot, my friends. Me and Toli here to break this one down for you. Although, I don't know, it seemed pretty obvious. Cyclone won because they played fantastically. Special shout-outs to the guy that I said, you know, because here's the deal. Mid laner Orignalspartan has been a part of the console scene for a long time. He's been an integral part of some of the streams that are out there, and he and I have had some conversations as well. But at the end of the day, when it was time for him to play, he turned up.
That's true. The game really spun out of control towards the later portions, but it all started from that early red buff into a purple buff invade. Normally, when you're dealing against an Amusin comp, you're trying to find ways to gank them, but instead, you're the one ganking a Kronos instead. So despite Benedicts securing their own red buff, it was this snipe from Spartan that started the pacing.
There it is, just right down. Right up and in the center. I mean, he lines it up, even finds out some extra damage after the fact, but this is kind of just what he's been able to do this entire time. I like how Spartan puts out the portal there and gives Patato the option. Are you going to go in, or are you going to escape via my portal? And then even follows up and provides the damage here. You know, I think the main key here for me, Toli, was how careful he seemed to be playing.
And he had so many opportunities because of his build. Going for a more old school build with the Soul Gem having more cooldown reduction allowed for some of these loosey-goosey snipes like that one that just was the last nail in the coffin.
You gotta like that one. That one definitely a lot of fun. But like I said, I mean, I think Orignalspartan here was playing extra careful. It is his debut, so coming out and playing very, very well. Patato also kind of did what he needed to as well.
He was very clean. He had a 4-level lead over his mid opposition that was struggling ever since that red buff invade, and that's what you really want out of a guy that has so much mobility, just to be able to farm it out there. And when you're a Discordia that far behind, you turn into this weird utility-based character, which your team needs more out of you besides, you know, setting up the 2-player stripes, because that's wishful thinking. You need the magical damage and the burst fire, but unfortunately for Benedicts, they didn't have the gold necessary to match up to the firepower from the Cyclones.